Good morning again, folks. So we'll continue on in relation to Assessment Task 1, Section 2 of the Managed Budgets and Financial Plans. And today we're going to cover off looking at calculating some variations between either costs or materials that are used. But as we get started, we're talking specifically about question 3, and there's 4 or 5 of these variation questions to go through. But as a reminder, let's talk about what a budget is in terms of budgeting and also what actual or actuals are. And those of you that work in accounting and or in business, I know some of you have got businesses and you'll be very familiar with these terms and how they work and how they operate. Let me clarify for those of you that are not accountants or don't have their business, budgets are simply a forecast, something that is predictable into the future in terms of not only dollars but also sales and also production needs and goods and services that could be budgeted for into the future. Another way of thinking about a budget is a little bit like the Weather Bureau, how they forecast and predict future weather events. Now they've got a lot of expertise, they've got a lot of tools to be able to get their weather forecast accurately, and this is one of the secrets in terms of being able to budget accurately. If you've got historical data that you can draw from to see any patterns in relation to what's happened in the past, that is reasonably predictable to what's going to happen in the future, and subsequently a budget can be put together. So in terms of actuals is what actually happens. So sure, we forecast for certain things to happen, but it doesn't always work out as we forecast and anticipate, and the actuals are what actually happens. So with those two words in mind, I want you to think carefully how we go through the variations. So in this exercise, this question 3, the first one's talking about, I think from memory, a D&B confectionery company. They manufacture cakes along with a lot of other things, but we're just going to be talking about the cakes. And in your packs and in your workbooks, you've got a little bit of information in relation to this particular case study, and they're talking about total direct material cost, material price, etc. We'll go through it in a bit of detail, but the information you have in terms of what they're budgeted for, and you have this information in your pack, is they've budgeted for $5 per kilo of flour to manufacture the cake. It takes 2 kilos, let's write this down as we go, so $5 per kilo, and they need 2 kilos to make a cake, and they're budgeting for making 100 cakes. Right, so that's the budget, that's what they've forecast, that's what they've budgeted. However, in your handouts you'll see what's actually happened is it's cost them $5.50 per kilo. Still they're on track in terms of 2 kilos per cake, and instead of budgeting for 100 cakes, they've actually made 110 cakes. So let's begin some calculations with this in mind. Let's begin some calculations in terms of the budgeted the direct cost materials. So what we would do in this case, would we calculate the $5 times 2, remember, 2 kilos per cake, times 100. So what would this equal?
$1,000.
$1,000, thank you. So that's what is budgeted for. However, what actually happened was $5.50 per kilo at 2 kilos, and they manufactured 110 cakes. So what would this be?
It's 1,210 kilo.
Wonderful. So $1,210. All right. Now, in terms of Section A, total direct material cost variance. So the variation, the difference between the two numbers, correct? So it's as simple as this. What's the difference between this number and this number.
210.
$210. Thank you. Now, in putting this together, let me ask you, from a budgeting and an actual, is this a favourable number or is this a negative number?
It's
Negative.
A negative number, thank you very much. So be very aware and be very careful of this. This is actually a negative number, and in accounting terms and bookkeeping terms, we use the brackets
bracket for the negative.
for a negative number. The other option you can use for a negative number is writing it in red, but probably safer to do it in brackets would indicate a negative number. So for section A, there's your answer, equals $210, which is a negative, unfavourable or a negative number. All right, in part B, direct material price variations. So we're looking here at the price. So what was the price of the kilo in the budgeted? $5. And what was actual?
5.50.
5.50. So let's do the calculations. So we've got $5 and $5.50. So what's the variation there?
0.50.
It's 0.50. The difference is 50 cents, or half a dollar, 50 cents as we say. In relation to putting the numbers together, so how many did we actually produce? What was actually 110? So if we times the 50 cents by 110, what number do we get? 55? All right. And how many kilos per cake? 2 kilos times 2 equals 110. Fantastic. And again, is this a positive or a negative number, this 110?
It's a negative.
Negative. Negative, guys. So, excellent. Thank you. So the answer to this is $110, which is a negative, unfavourable calculation, or unfavourable in terms of measuring the budget against the actual. Okay. All right, and I'll provide the form. I'll write down the formulas for you shortly. So those of you that feel more comfortable with formulas, we'll get them up there shortly. Let's just go through this in terms of an exercise to get you started, so you can work through the others. So the C, direct material usage variance. So in the direct material usage, so we're talking about the flour here, the material. So what was budgeted for? 100 at 2 kilos per, so 100 cakes
Yeah.
and 2 kilos of
Okay.
materials equals 200. Thank you. And what did actually happen? We made 110 cakes times 2, good, which equals 120. 220s, good. I'm glad you were on the ball. So, and with the variance, what's the variance of these two numbers?
20.
20 equals 20. Now that's the variance between these two numbers. However, what was the budgeted price we're going to sell them for? $5 for remember? $5?
Yeah.
So we would multiply that by the budget sales price, which equals
100.
100. And that would be our response for part C. Now, let me ask you, is this 100 a positive
No,
or a negative number?
it's a negative.
Negative number? Okay, thanks guys. So in terms of budgeting and actuals, they've been a bit out, haven't they, this particular case. They haven't allowed for that 50 cents variation, and in terms of production, they produced more cakes. They produced 10 more cakes than what was budgeted for, and therefore once you start doing these variations it paints somewhat a negative picture. Let me get some of the formulas up so it can be explained that way. So with part A, we've got the formula of budgeted costs minus actual costs. Good? So, and the total material price variations, we've got budgeted price, BT, minus actual price. So that's the $5.50 multiplied by the actual quantity. Thanks. And in the C, direct material usage variance, we've got the budgeted quantity, which was the 100, minus the actual quantity, good, and we would multiply that by the budgeted price. So there's the formulas in terms of working these calculations out. So any thoughts or questions? No. Guys, in your workbook and your handouts there's several other exercises to work through using these similar patterns and then subsequently similar formulas to go through. Thanks for your participation, and for those of you looking at home, thanks for your engagement, and I hope this little exercise helped.